Hey, my old buddy Chris Jadick joins us right now with his position as Director of Communications for TBARTA, which is perfect for Chris. And Chris, we want to talk about the Hyperloop transportation technologies that are coming up. And this is something about a tunnel bullet train concept. What would the tunnel bullet train concept be, Chris?
Well, good morning, Jack and Aaron. Great to wake up with the Stanley Cup, isn't it? So I'm glad to join you this morning.
Yes,
when we
indeed.
talk about Hyperloop, it's good to kind of define what it is. It's an emerging mode of transportation, still very much in the developmental stage, but it's designed to provide high-speed service, carrying passengers and freight in capsules through vacuum tubes. Elon Musk has called it a cross between a Concorde jet, a rail gun, and an air hockey table. However, it's important to note that aside from some test tracks and pod development, it's still conceptual, still very experimental. No one has yet ridden inside a Hyperloop pod traveling at speeds of several hundred miles an hour.
I think that's why most people, Chris, would say, like me, for instance, I would love to get from point A to point B in the fastest time possible. But when we talk about something like this, it's the feasibility that I think a lot of people question.
It's exciting. And, the state legislature gave TBARTA $1 million explicitly to take a look at transit technology such as this, the innovative transit technology that we're looking at, including air taxis and area gondolas, which you know about. And we did a study that concluded back in June. So this is very futuristic, but the time to start thinking about this and looking at this is now, and that's what TBARTA is doing.
What kind of an estimate would you give for if you do decide on something like that, it would actually come to pass? I mean, would it be a decade later, 5 years, or what do you think?
Well, it's at least a decade, and as I noted earlier, no one has yet ridden in a Hyperloop pod traveling at these speeds that they estimate can be, in excess of 700 miles per hour. Our ITT study sees 2035, that's 15 years from now, is really the earliest point at which we would probably have a Hyperloop project. Between now and then, there's a lot of experimental, designs that will go into the works. But the idea of us riding on Hyperloop, even if everything could fall into place, we're talking at least a decade.
Now, would this go underwater or across the water from Tampa to St. Petersburg, or what?
No, a very good question. Actually, the company who we spoke to this past week, who did a presentation to the TBARTA board, Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, or Hyperloop TT, they've provided an explanation of how this would happen on a multiple of ways. Tunnels, perhaps under the bay. Their first phase envisions a two-track tunnel that would go between Tampa and St. Petersburg. Phase 2 is tunneling continuing on to Bradenton, and then phase 3 would be above ground for the most part, going down to the Fort Myers area, across Alligator Alley to Fort Lauderdale, and then south down to Miami. So here in the Bay Area for regional transit, they propose some tunneling, but it's really a combination of above and below ground transportation.
For something that, like you said, never really been used here, what, just doing the research and the studying on it, what are the potential possible dangers of something like the Hyperloop?
I wouldn't want to speculate on the dangers necessarily. I will tell you that those who propose it will tell you that they see this as extremely safe because it would be an enclosed capsule in its own. It would not travel along the same corridor as, say, the Howard Franklin Bridge, because it would be enclosed, they see this as being highly safe. Now, of course, this is all very experimental. It's all very conceptual. But I know that those who propose it say, look, safety is not one of their major concerns. I think the bigger issues in getting this to reality are going to be certainly financial. It's going to cost billions of dollars to build this. And, of course, regulatory. How are we going to regulate this industry?
The other things, I was wondering if we've ever looked at monorail like they have at Disney, or I know you've looked at the gondolas, which have been talked about for Clearwater as maybe something for the entire Bay Area. But what practical ones do you have now? Light rail, obviously, being the most common one all across the country.
Light rail, commuter rail have been talked about in this area for a long time, and those are certainly on the table. As you know, we have our BRT, Bus Rapid Transit Project, which is probably the closest to development. And in seeing what PSTA and FDOT have done with Sunrunner, you really see what the possibilities are for some near-term transit development. Certainly, rail is always on the table. And interestingly enough, Hyperloop will probably be regulated by the Rail Transportation Department. So those things are always in development, I would say, but we're still doing a lot of talking. Some studies need to be done, and, of course, finding the funding before we move forward. That's always the tricky issue.
Yeah, the funding is a big deal. Well, Chris, we appreciate your joining us, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about this in the future. And tell Angie I said howdy.
I will let her know you said hi. Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
All right, Chris Jadick, who is the Director of Communications for the Tampa Bay Area Rapid Transit Authority.